Hello, and welcome to Mornings with Joel, commercial real estate podcast, where we focus on rising stars and established players in commercial real estate and talk to them about how they are building legacies in today's marketplace. To get started, we wanted to go ahead and welcome our guest today, Tom Robinson, who I've known for many, many years. You know, I'm looking at those red walls behind you. I remember the parties in your house there. So back in the day, we had some good times over there.
Yes. Well, I really appreciate you giving me a chance to get on my soapbox. I'll kick it off with a little background. Well, I'm a graduate of Florida State University, 1978, and I was actually a real estate major. And at that point, there was actually a big push for diversity and inclusion in life companies. I was recruited and hired by Equitable right out of college. And Equitable Life was like the third biggest life company. You had Equitable, Pru, and Met, the top three. And at that point, you know, there was no CMBS or anything else like that. So the life companies, they were the gorillas, the big boys on owning real estate and lending money on real estate and development. So I started in 1978. Basically, they had a training program that started you off as an appraiser trainee. So I got my background in valuation and actually rose to be the assistant chief appraiser for Equitable, overseeing a lot of their new loans and property acquisitions. And somebody had to sort of sign off on the values. I actually transferred down to the Boca Raton office, and I guess that was 84. And there I was the VP of valuation for Florida and the Caribbean, and we sort of had our first foray into I had my first foray into retail management, retail valuation, and so forth. We owned Dadeland Mall, which I think Simon owns now. It's one of their bigger, better malls down in Miami. We own Westland. We own several other malls. We actually, back in the late 80s, I guess it was the mid 80s, we bought General Growth, a package of malls from General Growth, and helped them become the General Growth REIT. So, heavy indoctrination into acquiring malls, valuing malls, and managing some of the malls in addition. Over time, I became not only the acquisition guy, not only the appraisal guy, but I was able to get on the transaction side. And I started disposition and acquisition work and sold a lot of real estate. So I came back to Atlanta. I live in Atlanta along with Joel, but, different parts. I was VP over disposition. And back in 88, actually 89, we sold a little over $2 billion worth of real estate. And
that was a lot for that time period.
I mean, it was kicking because the next year the first crash, one of the crashes hit, and this is when the RTC came into vogue, and we couldn't sell $250,000. We sold 250 million, but we couldn't get into the billions anymore. So we went into a asset preservation stage. I actually ended up being the guy who took back retail foreclosures and went out and, took them through the foreclosure process or deed in lieu of whatever, transferred them from the borrowers to ourselves. And it was one of my initiation into directly dealing with Simon. And Simon walked in, and I got to admit, Simon is a tremendously well-focused organization. They know that, hey, if it's not going to make any money, we don't want to waste our time on it. And so Simon handed us keys on several malls. I worked the disposition inside of Equitable with those malls. And in 1995, I decided to go on my own. And in going on my own, I was a broker. I'd become a licensed broker. And the deal I cut myself for the exit was to get several properties to sell, to broker.
Mm-hmm.
And so my first year on my own, I had 5 shopping centers, and I actually brokered Tower Mall in Portsmouth, Virginia. And the next year I got a shot at Regency Mall in Augusta, Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
And, from there, I went on to do about 12 mall deals with Simon. We bought Simon's first mall, which was Eastgate Consumer Mall in Indiana. And basically, Simon really, when malls, there are A malls and then there's everything else. And Simon is good on doing A malls, class A. These are the ones that everybody wants to go to. And when a mall falls down, Simon's out, right? They're going, hey, we knew to do what we do best. So I sort of became one of the go-to acquisition teams for Simon. The brokers would call me, Tom, we got a bad mall. Give me a price. Let's close this thing.
Yeah.
And if everybody it's not a lot of people here, but I don't know if it's general knowledge that malls have co-tenancy provisions, where if the anchors leave, if one anchor leaves or 2 anchors leave, the other anchors can leave. If the mall occupancy on the small shop space falls below a certain level, then the anchors can leave. So it's like it's a domino effect. The first domino gets kicked over, and it just goes until all the dominoes are down. And the problem with what's happening lately, or what's been happening now probably for a decade, is that we've had a lot of contractions in anchor tenants. So you've lost a lot of Dillard stores. Montgomery Ward went away.
Yeah.
Sears.
Yes, I mean there's consolidation. So Macy's bought Riches, and they bought so many other stores, and the malls just started having a harder time getting anchor tenants in place. Only a couple guys can actually develop a new mall, right? It's an art to it, but the art says that these guys come in on 20-year leases to make the deal financeable. And once those 20 years burn off, it's a different product.
Tom,
Right.
I'm sorry, I just had a question.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You use the
Johnny
phrase.
Stevens. Yeah, Johnny.
Yeah, this is
a little bit.
Johnny Stevens. How you doing?
Good.
Can you hear me there?
We can hear you, Johnny. Go ahead.
Okay. You use the term once it becomes a bad mall. Can you give me an idea of some metrics that qualify or quantify a bad mall?
Sure. A bad mall, there are several metrics that we look at. One is we look at the sales per square foot of the inline tenant stores. If the inline tenant stores their sales fall below, let's say $400 a foot on average, it's starting to become a little trouble. When they fall below $300 a foot, it's not really good. And once they get under 200, it's just pretty much not profitable for the mall tenant to remain in place. So we have that matrix, that parameter. Then we have the fact that sometimes we have an anchor leave. And as I said before, depending on the way the mall was developed, you could lose one anchor and it would give other anchors the ability to either go on percentage rent or go away. Or there are cure periods in most of the leases. It says, I lose an anchor. So J.C. Penney says, I'm out. They file bankruptcy. And you have to look at all the bankruptcies that have happened over time. And when an anchor tenant files bankruptcy, they have the ability to basically say, hey, I got a 1 year, the penalty on bankruptcy typically is 10% of the outstanding lease obligation for 1 year. So, the guy's down to 8 years on his lease. He says, hey, I can stay here, I can pay the rent and so forth, or I can, but not at the rate that we're on, or I'll take some sort of a discounted rate and I'll stay. And so we start having impacts to income. So a mall will go from having $25 million of net operating income to having $3 million of net operating income inside of 24 months. And it'll go from that $3 million of NOI down to losing $1 million in a matter of another 12 months. It's very expensive to run a mall. Their air conditioning, electrical bills are usually over $1 million. The security could be, $1 million alone. So you have no income, but you still got to light it. You got to air condition it. You got to sweep it, clean it. You got to, keep the parking lot lights on. And most malls, while we bought so many malls, is most malls sit on a lot of land. So we'll buy a mall. It's on 80 acres of land. The fact that you've assembled an 80-acre parcel, typically somewhere off of an interstate, says that, the land is worth something, right? We're going to do something with this place once it's no longer viable retail. Now, Simon is one of the best operators of malls that's out there. So Simon can't do it, and they call Tom Robinson, hey, Tom, when you come in and buy a mall, they pretty much know that, it's not going to operate as a mall long term. So we bought, it depends on where you guys are, I probably bought a mall somewhere near you over the last, 25 years. We bought from, New York, Buffalo, Niagara Falls, all the way out west to Utah, down to South Florida, out to Texas, Oklahoma, the Carolinas. If Delta flew there and there was a mall there and it was priced right, we took a stab at it. There's a website called deadmalls.com. And deadmalls.com has all these, used to be a mall, now they're no longer a mall. And I probably bought 10% of the malls on deadmalls.com. Sitting here in my little red room, with my cell phone, working through deals. I stopped buying malls actually about 8 years ago. And because when we started, everybody thought, well, you can buy a mall, you can flip it, you can make it another use and that sort of thing. And we were buying malls and flipping the mall contracts almost immediately. So, we bought malls down in Texas. The minute I'm back from the plane, I'm calling some guy, hey, I got this thing under contract. I control it, and it's cheap. It's 80 acres of land for $3 million, right? So I got this mall and I'll sell it to you for $6 million. So it's like a $3 million pop on a $3 million investment. And, you do enough of those, it adds up to some real money, right? And we we were sort of a small, I'm working out of my house, the capital's coming out of guy working out of his house. And, it's not a big organization, there's no vertical this and horizontal, all that. It's just him, me, telephone, and, get the wiring instructions and buy the thing. And normally we kept the Simon property manager who was at the mall in place on our payroll. Malls normally have 2 or 3 really, decent people there. I need the guy who knows how to turn the lights on and off. And I need somebody to sit there and placate the tenants with all their complaints. And retail tenants are the worst in the world. I mean, those guys are always complaining about something. We'd hire a skeleton staff, try to cut expenses as much as we could, and try to run it profitable as long as we could until we could get it sold off. And our bit was we would buy, and I always call it the junk car philosophy, right? So I buy them all. I got a J.C. Penney with some term. I'm going to use penny, but back then it was, J.C. Penney with a little term was valuable. So when you put all the pieces together, you were kind of losing money, or you were making a half mil or a mil NOI. But when you started looking at what the J.C. Penney box and land was worth, it may have been worth $4 million to somebody. So I'd strip off the working parts, strip out parcels. We go in, survey out the land on the street. Somebody want to come in and develop out parcels along the street. Didn't have a problem with it. And we sold what we could. It says like a junk car. We sell the radio, the tires okay. We sell the tires off the thing, and we just parcel it off. And some of the malls, we'd hold on the parcel. A couple of years ago, one of the malls we bought was in Cleveland, Ohio. Amazon came in and said, "Hey, we want to build a big distribution center here. You guys own a couple of these out parcels still. We want to take you out on the out parcel." Someone else had come in and bought the shell of the mall. So, I've owned malls. We had Magic Johnson theaters in them. Magic Johnson went away. Every anchor that's out there, probably Nordstrom's left me, Dillard's left me, Macy's loves to leave me. And, I would go and sometimes I would put pieces back together. So the Macy's store is doing horrible and I'm buying them all for little or nothing. Macy's I don't want this box. What do you give me for my 250,000 square foot Macy's box? And the answer sometimes amazingly was, I'll give you $500,000 and they'd be happy. And I'd buy a Macy's box for, $500,000. We have bought probably one of the best deals was bought this mall in downtown St. Louis Center. And Dillard's, the minute we closed, the Dillard's guy calls me up, "Hey, Tom, I hear you bought the mall. I want to leave, right?" I'm like, "Yeah, I do." And, it's like, "Here's my term. Here's what's left. I'll give you $3 million and I'll leave right now." I'm like, "Okay, great deal." They left. The building they were in was gorgeous. They were on the bottom 3 floors. We sold the building for $9 million, took their $3 million, and we'd only paid like $8 million for the whole mall. So once we finished stripping everything else out of it, it was a super home run. But
yeah. So no, that's really good information. Let's talk about that a little bit, because I know that the question is always, what's the future of retail? You hear that in the press all the time. And even in your example, the whole idea of a mall is generally to fill it up with retail, right? And you're talking about people and, they're leaving, you're dispositioning them, you're doing all these different things. So what really is that exit strategy? Why would a person buy a mall where the tenants are leaving? What is the repurposing of that mall on the backside of it? Because you're talking about a tremendous amount of square footage. What are some of the things that you're seeing out there that is, taking up this space so that it just doesn't all become cobwebs? And
it's hard. I mean, especially now, we all got this sort of COVID mind thing going. Malls work on foot traffic, right? And when foot traffic is down, you're toast. So, there's been some repurposing of anchor boxes for fitness centers, the Dave and Buster entertainment type complexes. We put bowling alleys in malls. We were big Stephen Berry owners, if you remember that concept. They came in and they would sell logo T-shirts, college T-shirts and that sort of thing, just a substitute tenant. But, it's hard to substitute a Macy's or Nordstrom's or something like that with, a ma and pa. I mean, you've seen it where they sort of tried to backfill with a flea market, and it doesn't normally work as well. Every now and then you have some examples. We have Fiesta Mall that became a huge Hispanic flea market. And it works. But the beauty about real estate is its economics, right? If it costs me $60 million to build a mall, I got to rent my space, and I need to, be able to bring somewhere around $6 million a year to the bottom line, NOI.
Right.
To have the kind of return that I really want to have. But if I buy the mall for $6 million, my return, then I only need $600,000 of NOI to get to the same 10% return. So, there's a lowering of levels where you have the A Mall, the Phipps Plazas, the Lenox Squares, the perimeters, and you have the demographics around it. You have the foot traffic, you have the disposable income, and so forth. And then you have the C, D, sometimes F, L malls that they have to be alternative use. You have some places where the cities are stepping up and tearing down parts, making parks. Again, we have a big, we've had like three malls here in Atlanta sort of go industrial, tear down most of the mall. Shannon Mall down in Union City, prime example of that. We've had Amazon actually come in on three of them, and it just depends on, where they are. And so I was buying a lot of malls that were built in areas where the demographics transition. So, they built it 40 years ago and the neighborhood looked different than it does today. Yeah. And it was sort of a security issue kind of thing. I could immediately walk in, go, I'm not scared to be there. Look at me. The shopper base looks like me. That looked like my cousin. So, I'm not really afraid to walk in there. But, ladies, young ladies, or ladies in general are what drives retail, right? The ladies don't feel safe being there. It's not going to happen.
Problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, Adrian had a question for you. Adrian, I'm going to ask you to unmute and go ahead and ask your question if you don't mind.
No, I was just going to piggyback off what he was saying about the co-tenancy clauses. So there's been a lot in the news about Simon and Brookfield and some other organizations purchasing some of the retail stores like Brooks Brothers, Forever 21, Aeropostale. There's a deal working now with possibly purchasing JCPenney. And so Simon is not in the retail business per se, they're in the real estate business. And so people are confused about why Simon is purchasing these retail stores. And a lot of it has to do with these co-tenancy clauses and keeping these stores operating in the mall so that you don't get below a certain vacancy percentage. And then, for example, the mall that I operate, we had 4 anchor stores and we lost 2 of them. One of which was Sears, and the other was a regional department store called Bergner's. And so recently, the Sears parcel was sold to the state of Illinois, and they are going to repurpose that box and use it as an office space for state employees. So that's going to bring between 500 and 700 state employees to the property that'll be here on a daily basis that can then turn into customers for the mall stores. So we're trying to do things like that that's mutually beneficial to the agency or the company that's purchasing the box, and so that both parties can benefit. In Atlanta, I know Phipps Plaza is turning what used to be Parisians, used to be Belks. That store went through a few different owners, and they're turning that into a Nobu hotel and restaurant, and part of that is also going to be a fitness center. So Simon is doing a lot of out-of-the-box things now. I had recently posted to the REAP alumni page because we're looking for strong local business owners that can come in and fill some of the vacancies in the malls. I happen to take on a property that has a pretty high vacancy rate. But overall, Simon is doing well, and some of that is being propped up by Simon going in with organizations like Brookfield and purchasing some of these retail stores.
Okay, all right, that's insightful. We appreciate that. So that's a good idea. Are you seeing more of that around the country, Tom, where government agencies are stepping in? I know I'm seeing it in parts of Atlanta here, where they're taking up.
Yeah, I mean, you have to. You don't really want to have, tumbleweed blowing through 80 acres at a pivotal corner. I mean, you basically it looks bad when the mall's dying, right? And it sort of brings down the whole retail node. Most usually, malls now are part of a entire development, sort of like Stonecrest,
Mhm.
right? So Stonecrest Mall comes in and you bring in a lot of office and other retail and so forth. And when the mall goes down, it's just sort of a pretty much sucking effect on the rest of the space around. It's hard to replicate the excitement of a Phipps, as I said, where you have a lot of ladies with disposable income, freely spending time in there and shopping and going to the food court and going to the restaurants and that sort of thing. And it's a different story when you bring in office or a big bookstore or library or something like that. You have people who are coming in and they may drive their work, get in their car and shop, someplace closer to their home versus where they work. I've not seen the retail sales really skyrocket after most replacement tenants go in there. They're not really advertising sales and that sort of thing that's driving the market. And, one of the things we have to think about too with malls is, the impact of Amazon and online shopping and that sort of thing, right? So you have so many retail dollars that are going to be spent. That's, it's not an infinite number.
Sure.
And if a lot spent on online, you're not going to have the foot traffic through there. Us guys going, hey, honey, how many purses you need to buy? Amazon showing up every day. I don't think now you need to go to the mall and do more impulse buying. So online's having a huge impact. COVID this year has had a tremendously big impact.
Yeah.
And when you look at the number of bankruptcies and retail and, corporate bankruptcy is a lot different than personal bankruptcy.
Mhm.
Corporate bankruptcy is pretty easy for a tenant to sort of declare it, scrape the leases they don't want, keep the ones they want, and they come out the other side smelling like a rose. The guys that are giving them the product, the clothes makers and so forth, go, yeah, we heard you had problems. Yeah, but here's a new line of spring outfits, and so they don't really get hammered and not be able to do what they've always done. They look the same, except if you're the owner of the place and your rent just got cut in half or you got a tenth of what you were getting and that sort of thing. So Simon's very smart to keep the co-tenancy provisions from making everything implode. But you can look at Simon's stock and see what COVID has done to it, right? I mean, the stock price has been knocked in half since, this COVID issue surfaced. And, everybody's really wondering, I got to walk around with a mask on all the time. How much shopping am I going to do?
Mhm.
Right? And the answer is a lot less. And even look at like Phipps and Cheesecake Factory. You got to look at all of the things that impact shopping,
Mhm.
the current impact and the future impact and so forth. I know today they're talking about a vaccine, and that's going to be, a wonderful, wonderful thing,
Mhm.
right? So we can get back to shopping as usual, shoulder to shoulder, not worrying about what we're touching and that sort of thing, not do as much online as we've been doing, retail picks back up. But, patterns are patterns, right? So once you start with somebody doing a lot of online shopping, my wife shops 24/7, right? She wakes up, I guess she had a dream she needed a new pair of shoes. So, I mean, so the tablet's right there. You just go on Macy's.com and, and and satisfy your shopping need.
Yeah.
How much will she now go in and shop at Macy's, and what's her purchases going to look like? She's impulsing online, so she's not needing to go to the store, and we'll see how that impacts everything.
Yeah.
But
Let's talk about that a little bit more, because you're right. This just came out today about this vaccine, and Pfizer rather might have that worked out. But if we continue this trajectory that we're on going into 2021, it could be twice as bad as what things are this year. How do you position yourself as a retail investor in a market like that? Or is there anything that you can do, because these are uncharted waters?
Well, what you're seeing a lot of is that people are putting more money in the essentials.
Mm-hmm.
The people that are grocery stores, and the Home Depots, the Lowe's, and the I'm going to have to do this, good times, bad times, no times.
Right.
We're going to be there. You see a lot of retail being transacted, or the triple net lease deals. With somebody who's what we call bankruptcy remote. Right. So I'm going to go with triple net Lowe's. It's 15 years left on the lease. You see the cap rates on those things, continue to tick down, while you see the cap rates on regular retail continue to tick up. I buy a lot of 150,000, 200,000 square foot community centers, or I used to. And one of the things that I'm doing now, it's like I don't know if I want to own a center that has 4 restaurants in it, and all the restaurants have to run at 50% capacity, and it's no money in it for them at that rate, so they can't continue to pay the rent that they're paying, and it's all going to fall back on the landlord and the lenders. So the real question is, how much are lenders going to be stuck with loans in default? And you probably read the TREP reports, and you see how many loans are delinquent now in every sector. I mean, the hotel sector has been totally devastated.
Oh yeah.
I think it's probably 1 out of 4 that's actually making its debt service coverage. Hotels aren't profitable at 30% occupancy.
Right.
So you're going to see huge amount of damage on defaults. And we're sort of that, I always call it a sheep or cattle mentality. Once you get the herd stampeding, everybody just starts running, and it's like, why are we running? Well, I don't know what's behind this, but since everybody's running, I would be running too. I don't want what's going to get the last guy to get me. I don't want to be that guy. So we're looking at what's going to happen in terms of capital coming into the market. United States sort of used to be no matter what, you can put your money in the US of A, real estate and life's going to be good. Well, when the US of A is the worst COVID response, and you're losing more people here than most other countries, you end up not being able to pull all that money in from Europe and China and Japan and all those other places like you did before. Right. So if you start seeing capital dry up there, you start seeing a lot of lenders say, hey, till I get my defaults back under 2-3%, I can't really go to my investment committee and ask for another couple $1 billion to be put out in real estate. This has been one of the slowest crashes I've ever seen, right? I mean, we've had crashes like when the CMBS market imploded, right? One day we were running at 60 miles an hour, then we hit a wall, right? And an airbag deployed, we hit and stopped so fast. This one's been sort of let's figure out if it's going to be as bad as some people predict, or whether there's some way that this thing stops and we go back to normal like that. And sort of leadership, well, we'll be back to normal like that. I don't know, right? It depends on how long it takes.
Yeah.
To get back. And retails, would I buy a Cheesecake Factory or standalone Chili's or Bennigan's or any of those type of things at this point? Probably not, right? I mean, I think you're going to find the default rate on a lot of these out parcels and go really through the roof. You're going to find occupancy issues, and occupancy issues make for income issues.
Kind of a wait and see. No, I said, so it sounds like more of a wait and see type situation, because it's, you wonder what's the executable strategy to benefit from this. Now, some folks like Simon Properties obviously have deep pockets and may be able to do some things, but if you can't generate the foot traffic, there's just so much you can do. So, I wonder if they're sitting on the sideline right now, or are they, vulture buyers, or what's going on. Adrian, I don't know if you have any input on that, but we've got about 15 minutes left on the podcast today, and if any of you guys have any other questions or statements you want to make, please feel free to join in as well. We're happy to hear from you and get Tom Robinson's feedback on it, who is a expert in the mall and retail sector. So while we're waiting on those questions to come in, do you have I saw you just unmuted yourself. Something you wanted to add?
Yeah, I'm just wondering going forward, big operators such as like Simon and Brookfield, the GGPs of the world, they have been seen more as like a destination. Do you see those operators trying to mitigate their risk and I guess move the way of like, say, like a Jamestown and more of like an experiential concept, kind of like Croc Street Market, or in a bigger sense, like Ponce City Market? Do you see that being the future going forward if they were to do some sort of retail? Or are those just kind of one-offs?
The mall concept, started, I guess, back in the 60s when they first started deciding that we're going to kill downtown by putting the mall here. It's going to be free parking and air conditioned park, environment, and it basically killed a lot of downtown retail, because prior to that, downtown retail was great. Now you've got a lot of these what I call forum shop type situations where you have stores sort of facing each other with parking in the middle, and it's really it's an active feel, but it's somewhat cheaper for the landlord because he's not air conditioning everything. The stores are air conditioning themselves, and it just becomes a concept that becomes more profitable for owners, less risk for lenders. I think it's the new thing. I mean, it's very competitive with most malls. Anchor stores are probably going to start downsizing their stores. They're a 250,000 square foot 4-level or 3-level store may not be what we see in the future. And you have to look at format changes, and sort of predict, where we're going. The automobile made the mall, right? Before, and the automobile was also killing the mall, because I'll drive by a mall to go to a forum shop that has, the restaurants and a couple of stores I want to go in. It just has a better feel. So, yeah, I think that you're not going to see the mall developments like you saw in the past. That you're not going to have an ability to assemble 1 million square feet on a speculative basis, go out and raise the money to develop that 1 million square feet all at once, because that's how malls sort of go. We have an opening date, a grand opening, and we got 1 million square feet, with the balloons and everything else, and there's the day, and it goes there. 20-year clock starts. So with the forum concept, I either build the shops as I lease the shops. I might do some spec stuff, but I'm not under the same gun to open up 1 million square feet at the same time.
Let me ask about that, because that brings up a good point. And thank you for your question. If there are any other questions, please feel free to join in. But what about the hybrid model that's in between those two, which I would call your Avalon, all right, where you have your multifamily, you have your streets, and you have that urban feel. Now, obviously, Atlantic Station started here in Atlanta with that. they did well and kind of tapered off, but it looks like that Avalon model is people are identifying that as the model to replicate in other cities like Charlotte and other places. What are your thoughts on that? Is that the future of retail, or what do you think?
I think it is. I think that you're not going to see as many gigantic air conditioned parks, what I used to call them, mall type developments, and everybody loves that concept. You got condos on top, apartments or whatever, and retail on the bottom, and almost a live work sort of feel. You got a lot more people working from home and just loving the fact that I work upstairs, I can come down, I hit the bar, and I can crawl back home at night after lighten it up a little bit.
Right.
It's getting out in front of trends that separates the guys who make a lot of money from the guys that are sort of going down the road behind what was. I would hope that there will be, especially in some northern parts of the country, winters are tough, and being inside a mall, beats driving up and then trying to find your car in the snow later on. But
That's true. I remember them days.
yeah, but for Sunbelt guys, I think the Avalons and so forth are just they're the way that it can be financed if there is money to or capital to go into projects right now.
Yeah, that's a good point. So now, if you think about that, and Adrian's on the phone here, I'm sure she's not going to give away any trade secrets, but do you see like assignment properties and companies like that moving and morphing kind of into that model where it is more live, work, play with multifamily over retail? Or you think they're going to continue to try to make a run at it with the traditional model of a mall, like we see with Lennox and Phipps and those models?
Simon's smart, right? I mean, Simon's among the you don't change people's desire. You figure out what their desires are, and you give them what they want, right? So, I mean, Simon's not going to build malls if everybody says, "I like Avalon" or "I like Pond Center," and that sort of thing. I don't think. I know Simon, right? And as I said, I bought over a dozen malls from those guys just because they understand what's working. Let's get rid of what's not. And the problem with a mall is you would think you could take a can opener and cut the top off, and now we have a Avalon because you get to see the sky. But it doesn't really work that way. I mean, malls are sort of designed inward unless you can get the cars inside and open it up. It's just been hard to figure out a way to compete with the smaller stores that are there. Most mall stores are 5,000 to 7,000 square feet. But when you go into these little forum shops and so forth, I mean, those stores are closer to 3,000, 5,000 or something like that. You might have some bigger restaurants at Chipotle or something, but the format is strong. Even see the Walmarts of the world that they said at one point, Walmart wanted to build a 250,000 square feet, 300,000 square foot super Walmart. And now you see they're going, well, let's try these urban concepts. We want to come in, we can build a 45,000 square foot urban concept store, and we're going to make more money per square foot, and we're going to change how we retail. The same thing happened with the supermarkets, right? At one point, grocery stores were 25,000 square feet. Then they went to 35,000. Then they went to 65, and then 90,000, and we brought in the things,
and they're kicking their butts.
and everything else.
And they're taking a lot of that market share with that smaller footprint.
Yes, yeah. So I think that the beauty about what we do is there's always change, right? I tell everybody, I've been in it 40 years, but what happened 35 years ago, the concept of buying real estate and valuing real estate and so forth, that still stays the same. But the issue of it's like a phone, right? I've always picked up the phone and said hello. When I was a kid, the phone had a rotary dial. You put your finger in it. Now it's a cell phone. It's not connected to nothing. You can pick it up and say, call wife, and boom, my wife gets on the other end. So it's still a call, but all the parts in between have changed. So it's almost somewhat, the call is still recognizable, but the technology and the formats and all this sort of stuff is totally different. And you have to, if I had stocked up on rotary phones, they don't even work anymore, right? You could probably sell them in a museum, and there may be one downstairs in the basement because I never seem to throw anything out. But you can't stay with an old concept, right? You have to go with the new. And one of the things I wanted to say, sort of the new concept too, is now we're on the internet, right? We got Zoom calls, we got crowdfunding, we have better 401k access to cash, and we have a lot of different sources of money that we didn't have at our disposal, back when I started. As I said, the light company was a guerrilla. There was no such thing as a CMBS market, right? So now we have, CMBS. It took a hit. It's never gotten back. The question is, what will replace what was a CMBS, market? Will banks step up and fill the void? Will the market ever come back on that front?
Let me get Adrian in right quick. She had a point she wanted to add, and since she's with Simon, I certainly want to hear what her feedback was on this. Adrian, you still there? I know you dropped off and came back on.
I'm here. I lost the connection, so I didn't hear your question, but you were talking about going to the kind of live, work, play
Yeah, I want
model.
to get your take on, if we think a Simon of the world, those type of retail organizations are going to start moving toward, and you said Simon is not retail. I certainly understand that they're in real estate, but as a real estate investor, which they are, do you think they'll move to that hybrid model of a Avalon type structure as opposed to the traditional Lenox mall type structure?
What they have now at Phipps Plaza is somewhat of the live, work, play. If anyone can think of there's some new apartment buildings just to the left of Phipps Plaza. So Simon was involved in that development. And like I said, the redevelopment of the old Parisian store, they're doing a hotel. And it really has to do with the city where the mall is located, whether they can, whether there's buy-in from all partners. So all of the stakeholders kind of have to buy into that concept. So where I am right now, they don't have any of those kind of live, work, play areas. And I would love to see something like that here. So yeah, that's not out of the question. And I think also there's been some talk in the news about Simon partnering with Amazon. I don't have any specific knowledge about that other than what everyone has seen in the news. But yeah, Simon is really looking to diversify and understanding that the company cannot be sustained solely by retail stores anymore. That's just not the way things are working anymore.
Yeah, good point. Good point. We certainly appreciate you bringing that out. Well, we're just about out of our time for the day. I don't see any other hands, so we certainly appreciate your input. Tom, we'll let you have the last word. This has been a very insightful call, and I got to be honest, I didn't know you were still as active as you are. So you've done a lot over your years. We would certainly love to have you back and to have you talk more about it. But any final comments for our guests today as it relates to diversity in commercial real estate, and what opportunities should they look at if they're looking to grow their background in commercial real estate?
Well, I was really happy to see the push for diversity once again, after the George Floyd incident. And I think it may actually, with Black Lives Matter and with the new president-elect and so forth being able to say Black Lives Matter, I think we have a chance that diversity will take root, real efforts to bring on people, grow people. I guess my last statement would be, if you want to be successful in the business, network, right? Get out there, find people who may be more willing to deal with you than someone else. Make friends, keep friends. The greatest asset I've had is the fact that that, I came from a equitable that grew to $80 billion of real estate, and people knew me and they could say, yeah, you can deal with that guy. He's going to do what he says he's going to do. So, network, do what you say you're going to do, be a person of integrity, make friends when you can, play as much golf as you can. You got to get that in. There's a lot of room out there, and there are a lot of ways to make money. Take guys who hit success, pat them on the back. Don't envy their success. It's part of your success.
Yeah, absolutely. That'll be
Feel free to share my information, Joel. I'm sort of the undercover brother. Since you buy bad malls, you don't want everybody to know who you are, and that sort of thing. But I welcome the chance to help anyone I can.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Tom. That you bring up a good point, because I can assure you the majority of folks on the call today probably was like, well, who's Tom Robinson?
Right.
But then when
who bought all those malls? And I didn't know it was a black guy out there doing it.
Exactly.
Right.
Good point. So we're glad that you took out a little bit of time to join with us today and talk to the group. So we certainly appreciate it. Tom, we absolutely got to get back out there on the golf course, and have you whip my tail like you've done before. But we'll make that we'll make that happen one day. But it's been a pleasure, and we certainly appreciate all your wisdom and input. And we look forward to getting with you again. So, Tom, thanks again. Anything else you want to share, or just say goodbye to everybody?
Bye, guys.
Okay, all right.
Nice.
Thanks so much.
Take care, everyone. Have a great day. You've been listening to Mornings with Joel, Commercial Real Estate Podcast, where we focus on rising stars and established players in commercial real estate and talk to them about how they are building legacies in today's marketplace. Please check back weekly to hear our upcoming guests.